Contrary to what diet culture tells you, physical hunger is not the only form of hunger you need to be listening to. There are actually 4 different types of hunger, and I think learning to understand the 4 different types of hunger is actually a helpful tool and can help you with your mindful eating and your healthy relationship with food. So today we're going to talk about the 4 different types of hunger, how to recognize them, and how to respond. And first up, the body's natural signal, physical hunger. So physical hunger is just your body signaling to you that you need energy. It's signaling a need because your stomach is likely empty, and so you have hormones in there that are telling your brain that it needs food. Physical hunger starts gradually. It will build over time. You're unlikely to go from like 0 to 10 in a few minutes unless you're really out of tune with your hunger cues. Physical hunger is accompanied by the classic signs of hunger that we all know. You're going to start to feel like your stomach is empty. It's going to growl. You're going to sometimes get stomach pangs, and you may feel like you lack energy. You may feel some dizziness, lightheadedness, even nausea if you wait too long. So a typical example of physical hunger is that you haven't eaten in like 3 or 4 hours and it's starting to be time to eat. Like maybe it's like 1 p.m. or something and you start to get hunger signals and you decide to eat your lunch, and your lunch is pretty balanced, made up of a bunch of veggies. You're gonna have maybe a couple slices of this like veggie pie with a salad, and that is going to sound good to you because when you're physically hungry, you want something that is going to be satisfying and balanced, but you're not looking for any type of specific food that is going to satisfy a specific craving. You just want to eat, essentially. And that's how you can kind of recognize physical hunger. If you compare it to like emotional hunger, physical hunger, you're gonna be fine with eating this and any food is gonna seem appealing, basically. Emotional hunger, you're gonna have specific foods that you wanna eat. The foods that you feel are going to help kind of eat out your emotions. And the thing with physical hunger is that if you eat a balanced meal and if you eat enough of it, then it's going to gradually go away and you're not going to be left with any feelings of guilt or shame or anything like that because you just listened to this like natural signal and then you can go on with your day. So how you want to respond to your physical hunger, obviously you want to eat. Avoid waiting until you're starving. You can try using the hunger fullness scale. I'm gonna put it right here. So basically you should start eating when you're around like a 3 or 4 on the scale and not wait until you're absolutely ravenous because this will, first of all, be uncomfortable and also lead you to make decisions that probably aren't the best nutrition-wise. And you also want to make sure that the meals that you are eating are balanced. You want to make sure that you are eating enough with plenty of healthy carbs and protein and fats and a bunch of fiber as well. And you should be having around 3 meals a day to satisfy your physical hunger, maybe a bit more, like a snack or 2 if you feel like you need that. The thing about physical hunger is it's so important because it's kind of the basis of all the other types of hunger, and if this one isn't satisfied, it's going to be really hard to satisfy the other ones. The second type of hunger that everybody likes to hate on, emotional hunger. This is your response to emotions, feelings, and it is a craving of food that isn't linked to any type of physical hunger usually, and it's going to be more linked to the emotions that you are currently feeling. Usually emotional hunger will be very sudden compared to physical hunger. It's not something that's going to happen gradually. It's you can get hit with a wave of emotion and then all of a sudden this need to help alleviate this emotion with the hunger. So an example of emotional hunger would be that I just had this horrible situation with a friend, this big argument. We both left in tears. It was just a really, really bad moment. And now I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling sad and just drained. And I want to eat something that's like a little pick me up. I'm not necessarily craving a specific thing. I just need the type of food that is going to be pretty comforting. In my situation, it's going to be some bread with nut butter. So when you eat emotionally, it doesn't mean that the food is going to be super unhealthy. It just means that you are eating in response to your emotions rather than in response to a physical signal. And usually you're going to crave specific types of food, not necessarily one food in particular, but just types of food. You're not really going to be craving like chicken and broccoli most of the time. And then what's going to happen is that you're going to get feelings of guilt or shame when you're done because you feel bad for listening to your emotions and eating
instead of actually dealing with what the issue was, and you're gonna feel like you're not very satisfied with the way that you ate, and it's like now even adding another issue on top of it, because before you were stressed emotionally and now you're stressed emotionally still, and also you ate too much. I'm not saying that this is how you're supposed to feel. I'm just saying that this is likely how you will feel, and this is to help kind of differentiate between the different types of hunger.
So how should you respond to emotional hunger? First of all, it's okay to pause, check in, and ask yourself, am I physically hungry or not? Am I just craving this food? Is it just emotions? You can ask yourself that and then still go on to satisfy your emotional eating. That's okay. Emotional eating doesn't need to be pushed to the side all the time, but it does need to be recognized in order to understand what kind of drives it. So if the response is that it is emotional eating, not physical eating, you can first try to cope with it another way. And this is going to be very personal. You should really make a list of all the activities that you enjoy doing and that will help you alleviate any kind of these negative emotions. This can look like taking a walk, or calling a friend, or watching your favorite movie, or reading a book, or listening to music, playing with your dogs, learning a new hobby, whatever. And then if that doesn't work, you can allow yourself to eat the food to satisfy your emotional need for it. And by allowing yourself to eat it, and by doing so in a way that is mindful and not this kind of urge, uncontrollable urge, where you just immediately get the thought of the food and then you immediately eat it and binge on it. Since you just walk through all these steps, then you're going to be able to enjoy the food in a way that is more mindful, with less feelings of guilt or shame, and then fully appreciate what you're eating and then move on. And if you want to learn more about the difference between physical and emotional hunger and how to deal with emotional hunger, check out my video on that right here or in the description. Now it's time to talk about a type of hunger that isn't really well known, and that is practical hunger, or just eating for your energy balance, or like eating preemptively, I guess. Practical hunger involves looking at your overall schedule, like what you have to do, and eating in a way that aligns with that. And most of the times it's going to be eating preemptively, because you know that something is going to happen where you're not going to be able to eat when you want, or you're not going to be able to listen to your hunger cues. And since you want to prevent that, and then that means that you also don't want to get to a place where your physical hunger is overwhelming, you're going to eat before you're really hungry. This is really good because it helps prevent extreme hunger. It helps prevent like energy crashes and binging, overeating, all of that. And it's really good for people who have very busy schedules and who don't really have the luxury of listening to their hunger fullness cues all the time. Even if in an ideal world we would just all listen to our hunger fullness cues and eat whenever we wanted to and stop whenever we wanted to, that's just not realistic. So I think it's really important to be familiar with practical hunger and to understand that it's totally normal and a normal part of healthy eating, of intuitive eating even, to actually eat something before you get hungry.
Now, a good example of practical hunger is I have a client meeting in 30 minutes from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Now, that's a time that is a little bit weird for me because usually that's when I have my lunch break. So now I'm not hungry for my lunch, but I know that at 2 p.m., if I haven't eaten anything, I'm gonna be starving. And then I'm not gonna make the best choices. I'm probably gonna overeat and I'm gonna be uncomfortable, and I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is eat something. So this is a feed bar. I love feed bars. I talk about them all the time, but just any type of energy bar or like meal replacement bar that you really like. And I'm gonna eat that. Maybe not the entire bar, maybe until I feel pretty satisfied. And in that way, I'm going to prevent feeling ravenous in a few hours. And then when my meeting is done, I can have my light lunch. And this also will honor another aspect of the practical hunger, is that if I were to have my heavy usual lunch around like 2:30 p.m., then that would kind of mess up my entire schedule, because then I'm not gonna be as hungry for my snacks, so that's gonna have to be delayed, and then I'm not gonna be as hungry for my dinner, so everything's gonna be delayed. And if I want to avoid that, I'm just gonna have this little bar so that I can then have a light lunch after my meeting. And that's exactly how you want to respond to practical hunger, is that you want to take into account your schedule and you wanna eat in this moment, even if you aren't starving, even if you don't really feel like it, even if whatever the reason, you still want to eat. And another example of this is, let's say you have a test coming up and it's a pretty long test and you're very stressed for that test. So you're not feeling hunger, but you know that it's time to eat, and also you know that you're going to be in the test for 4 hours. So you know that you need to eat, and that's when your practical hunger kicks in. You're going to eat something, even if you're not hungry, even if it doesn't make you feel good to eat, because you know that your body will need that energy.
And last but not least, taste hunger, or the pleasure of food. Taste hunger / craving hunger is about craving a very specific food item purely out of enjoyment, not because of hunger, physical hunger, or not because of emotional hunger even. It's just you're really craving this specific food. This can really be triggered by a sensory experience, like you just saw an ad about this food, or you just saw somebody eating this food, or you saw a picture of it on your phone and you got reminded of how much you wanted this food. And if you decide to ignore this completely, it can lead to feelings of deprivation and then binging later on.
So for taste hunger, typically for me, I'm going to crave Twix. I'm not going to be hungry, I'm not going to feel emotional, nothing really is going to be going on, but I'm going to think of them for a reason. Maybe I just remembered that I have them, maybe I just saw a picture with Twix and I'm like, oh, I want one right now. And so I'm just gonna go eat that. And the thing with taste hunger is that it's very specific. Like if I'm craving Twix and I don't have any and I have chocolate in its place, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna satisfy that type of hunger. And how to recognize this type of hunger is that you're not gonna be physically hungry, you're not really gonna be emotionally hungry, but you're still going to have this craving for one thing. This can happen a lot for dessert. I know a lot of people that tell me oh, I am not hungry for the meal anymore, but I still want that dessert. It's not really gonna be emotional because nothing stressful or anything is going on. It's not gonna be physical because you just had your full dinner, but you're still gonna want that taste of something sweet. That's the taste hunger. And the thing with taste hunger is that if you satisfy it pretty early on, then likely you're not gonna go overboard with it and a little bit of it is going to satisfy you. That's different than emotional eating where you're probably gonna need to eat a certain amount of it to feel emotionally satisfied.
So how you want to respond to this taste hunger is I would give yourself a few minutes in order to see if this was just this one-time thing that happened because you saw an ad and now you're thinking about it. Wait a few minutes to see if that goes away or if you're still really wanting it. And if in a few minutes you still really want that food, then that's totally fine. You can have that food and enjoy it. But you want to enjoy it in a way that is mindful. You want to savor the experience. You want to fully allow yourself to have the food that you crave and then let yourself enjoy it so that you can be satisfied and move on. And you want to enjoy that food in a way that is moderate and reasonable. If you're craving some cookies, you can have one cookie and really savor that instead of having 15 cookies. And having one cookie instead of 15 is going to be easier to do if you actually allow yourself to eat the foods when you start craving them, and when you do so in a way that doesn't involve feeling guilty or shameful or anything like that, then you will be satisfied with less.
And now if things that seem more simple to you allow me to complicate them, these types of hunger can actually overlap. And you can feel multiple of them at once. So let's say you had a long day at work and you're emotionally stressed and you are wanting to eat something that's gonna comfort you, but also you didn't have time to eat your lunch at work. Then you're gonna have both emotional and physical hunger. Now let's say that you are very emotional, something distressing has happened, you're very stressed, and so you wanna eat emotionally, but also you have a craving for something that's very, very specific. The other stuff is not gonna cut it. That's a mix of emotional and taste hunger. You can also have a mix of all three of these, and you can also know that you need something practical. You're not really hungry, but still you're craving a specific type of something, and that's where your practical hunger and your taste hunger will overlap. So basically, there's a bunch of ways that these different types of hunger can kind of overlap and interact with each other. And the more you work on identifying each one, the more you're going to be able to satisfy the different parts that you need, and that's how you're going to be able to eat less to feel as satisfied, because if you're able able to pinpoint exactly the types of hunger you need to fulfill, and you're able to add a little bit of food, the type of food that's gonna fulfill each different type of hunger, then you're gonna be satisfied with this amount of food. And this amount of food is probably gonna be lower than if you were to just be like, nope, I'm just physically hungry and that's it, and force yourself to eat food to satisfy your physical hunger, go way beyond your physical hunger, and then all of a sudden you need to satisfy all the other types of hunger and you need way more food to satisfy them.
So in short, you need to remember that hunger is not just something that you need to do in order to survive. There's lots of things that also come into play, like your emotions and your schedules and your tastes. And it's important to remember that feeling hunger isn't bad, it's a good sign, and feeling different types of hunger also isn't bad. The more you learn about these types of hungers and the more you learn to listen to them, the better you will be at understanding the signals that your body is sending you and responding in the appropriate way. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it and subscribe, and see you on my next one. Bye.